And good morning. It's Friday Live here with Bailey and French talking about humanising work every Friday, 8:30 GMT. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook and our YouTube channels. And this morning, I am delighted to say I have a rare guest, Mr. Tom Bailey, joining me, my husband and the co-owner of Bailey and French. Hi, Tom, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Good morning, everyone.
This is a bit awkward, isn't it? So, how are you doing today?
Good. Busy with work, obviously, but enjoying the end of the week. Having kids back at school and getting back into the full flow of work again post half term. So it's been a productive week for sure.
It has. It's been really busy as well. We've had some events on this week. First face-to-face events back in London. Really enjoyed getting together with clients, friends and partners this week. And looking forward to much more of that, actually. It started to feel a little bit normal again. Not totally, but a little bit. And today and the reason I invited Tom to be a guest here on Friday Live is because we have a family business. And I thought it might be really good for us to actually have a conversation live, unscripted, unrehearsed, to talk about the connection between family and humanising work, because certainly for me in my role as CEO, it's really, really important around the values, how we operate in the business, how we're set up for the future, and our ambitious plans for Bailey and French. But also it extends much broader than that in terms of what do we even understand as family? People have different connotations of that. But also, I thought it might be interesting for other people to hear the differences of opinion that exist within our ownership of the business, being partners that work together every single day on the same business. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts as well, actually, because this is not a topic we've talked about in this way before. So yeah, I put up a question here. Why is family important to us in humanising work? It's a big, broad question. But maybe we should just start with kind of what is family? Because obviously family can mean lots of things to lots of people. What do you think?
Well, for sure, and it's not a new question. It's something that people have pondered for many years in terms of extended family, particularly in the perception of modern life where families are not normal, but everyone's family is not normal, and extended families, whether or not it be through remarriages and stepsisters, stepbrothers, or different living arrangements. So family is a generic term in some senses, I guess. So family, I guess, I don't know, what does it mean to me? It means your kind of personal community, I guess, of people that you live your life around. It's not unusual, and even in our life, our kids refer to people that are not related to us as uncle this, auntie that, and it's that extension of the people you love, basically the people that are close to you within your life, which are typically your family, not always, but normally they are your blood relatives, but all those around. So I guess it's open for good discussion in terms of what qualifies as family and who you see as it, but it's in the eye of the beholder in many senses. And I think that's where we're going to. Clearly, there's a lead on into the workplace and the people around you of how that works.
Yeah, and this is the thing where I really wanted to talk about this topic today, because family, for me, it does mean so much of what we're talking about. And with obviously all the pieces that have impacted us, all the challenges that have impacted us over the last couple of years with the pandemic, lots of people have been isolating with family members and spending more time with them than they have previously. And friends, not just necessarily family, friends or people they may consider to be family that, as you said, aren't necessarily blood relatives. There's also obviously a whole load of people out there who are isolating completely alone and didn't have necessarily their family in their household with them and had to find new ways of connecting with them, their family that they did have, but also people who don't have a very large family at all or any, finding new ways of connecting with people in their community and people that they care about and that they love. They're in their living rooms, they're in their bedrooms talking to people who have got a desk set up at the end of their bed. And actually family has become really kind of, as I said, it's come into the workplace and at an accelerated rate too. So, it's a really good time to think about that. And what impact that's had on us. I mean, we were in that situation. We were homeschooling, we were juggling running a business with children, different ages, different demands, and having to look after all kinds of different aspects of our lives in a completely different way, as well as then having conversations with our extended family in different countries, different time zones, about all the different restrictions and guidelines we were adhering to. You know, it's become really, it's just become central, not necessarily just as important, any more important, but just become much closer. And what does that do to us? So what does that make us focus on? Does it make us more, is it more...
Well, it certainly brings down the barriers, you know. You look back and there was that relatively famous Zoom meeting or whatever it was of that chap that was on the call, and his kid came in, and then his wife came in to bundle his kid back out, and that was kind of like, oh my God, how embarrassing. And now you see with the kind of conference calls that everyone is so used to, it's just not unusual to see people walking around in the background and life going on. Obviously, you still probably limit that. There's still a tendency to keep as professional as possible, but the barriers are certainly lower in terms of seeing into people's lives. And, you know, even to the point where people are commenting and looking forward to seeing what's in the background of people's pictures, etc. Because you get that little, particularly, you know, not all families live next door to each other anymore. We don't all live in the same town. So using, in some senses, the family has become a tighter knit community, and whether or not that be blood relatives or the extended family we've talked about, by using Zoom, Teams, etc., people have felt the need to kind of reach out and kind of rely on that, or bring the family unit closer together. And certainly in my life, you know, through that time, I spent more time probably talking to my family, my parents, than I did pre-pandemic, despite not being able to see them. And I think, as I say, just the for lots of reasons, the focus on family and the value that has is certainly, seemingly, in my perception anyway, raised in many people, that it's reflecting on how important that is, whereas people are so tied up in corporate life and the 9 to 5 that I think people are understanding the value, and it's reflected in the, you know, moving out of the city into the countryside. I know not everyone is left London, but, you know, there is a migration there, and I think all of that is around, you know, reevaluating your priorities, which I think the family piece is central to that. Clearly, you know, kids, extended family, etc. So it's had a huge impact on the kind of modern world.
Yeah, and that makes me just think about kind of what does that mean for the future in terms of where we are. Exactly as you said, I think 700,000 people or 800,000 people moved out of London through the pandemic, and that's a huge number. And it does make me think about, you know, exactly that. How many more people have put what's really dear to them at the heart and at the forefront of their lives, rather than kind of putting things off. And we see loads of people changing jobs too, and lots of decisions around bringing family more central to those decisions. I heard earlier on in the week that a lot of lockdown babies are quite advanced because they've been around their families more than they potentially would have been, raising their heads up, walking earlier, talking earlier. I mean, that's incredible. You think about that impact on what it's done to our family. And I'm beginning to feel that actually the family-centered focus of values needs to be amplified in organizations, because we know people are feeling more empowered, they're feeling able to talk more and demand more for their personal needs, for their own well-being, and family is central to that. And so what does that mean for organizations going forward in terms of their duty of care for the individuals that work within that organisation? Is it just instantly extended to everyone's family as well? And what does that mean for business? And what does that mean for organisations that we're working with when we're implementing people practices? Is it all about the workplace in terms of the output and the outcome? Or actually, should we be extending all of our kind of people interventions for people to be able to use within their family unit beyond the workplace?
Yeah, I think it is obviously a difficult one, because obviously we operate in a relatively small business compared to many corporates. You know, we're not 100,000 employees, And you would argue that maybe those larger organizations have literally the capital to make, and the ability to make significant changes and interventions to help that. However, you worry that it's very difficult for it not to be a corporate solution and have that kind of personal feel to it, because you can't, if you're managing, or you have an organization of 100,000 people, it can't be bespoke to every single person. So it needs to be largely a one size fits all with some contexting in there. I think within an organization like ours and other mid-sized businesses, it feels like it's maybe a bit more attainable to have a more human approach to that, and kind of be connected. Like, we know the people that work with us, we know about their kind of personal lives and families, etc. In a big organization, it's very difficult on a corporate level to do that. Obviously, on a local level, maybe that's the case, and maybe that's the way forward, is that you can't have I know I just said this, but you can't have a one size fits all. Literally, you just roll it out like another thing on the benefits package. It needs to be something where there's some scope for contexting, and locally people can affect that. But I think it does. I assume this kind of dovetails well into the common aspect of working from home and the hybrid and aspects of expectations of people now, and where things will balance out between the corporate expectation and an individual's expectation. There's still some gap there in terms of where things will end up, but clearly we are in a different world now in terms of what people expect from work and how they're going to balance that work-life piece. So I think embracing that and understanding the family values piece, or the family values aspect that people expect, I think is, if you ignore it, I think you'll be punished as an organization. So I think it's very much something you need to be on the front foot and kind of think of proactive strategies and approaches to make people feel valued, to be valued, and to feel you're an organization they want to work with and build that life with. We don't live, people talk about it quite a lot, but we don't live in the old world where you stay in a career or a company for 20-30 years on in normal senses. But to build an organization and a climate and culture within that people feel that they could and they might want to, I think is probably what will attract people to your organization versus whoever down the road. I think it's a difficult one, but an important thing to get right.
It is, isn't it? And it's really funny because I mean, so many times when people find out that we work together, I get the same comment over and over again. How could you possibly work together all the time, right? And it really, it's challenged me to think about like what the benefits and pros and cons of that all the time. And I think my standard response is always the same, kind of like, I know you so well, the trust is there to such a degree that I think it benefits the organisation no end. But in terms of us, for me, it's just a way of being. It doesn't affect anything. We still have a life outside of work too. And yes, sometimes it dominates, and sometimes there's more focus on you, and sometimes there's more focus on me in terms of work versus kind of juggling and balancing home life and family. But for me, it's a strength. It's a strength for the organisation, for Bailey and French. And I think about what I think we bring to it. It's funny because we've ignored it. We've not talked about it. We've just allowed it to be in the background. And actually, I think now, if ever there was a time to talk about it and what you can get from it and share that in terms of how we can really humanise work by bringing family values into that people first, human first experience that loads of organisations are talking about. We shouldn't overlook the fact that actually family is central and core to being a human being. And we've got some of that here, and it might be almost like unconsciously, just because we've set up this way, that we're ignoring the fact or overlooking the fact that actually we've got some really exciting kind of elements here that could be shared with other organisations that don't necessarily mean everyone has to work with their partner as we do, but there is something there about the essence and the values of a family business. And for me, I know several of those that come to mind. So I'll come back to mine in a moment. What do you think we have as values, as kind of being part of the same family that we've brought into this business? Putting me on the spot there a bit.
No, that's fine. I think I will answer your question, but there's kind of conjuring a few ideas or thoughts in my head already, in that there is a difference between, say, you and I working in an organization because we are married and we are obviously kind of partners in that sense, and then working in the office environment versus other people in the office and treating them as kind of our company family, because we have the advantage obviously knowing each other for a long time, and that we can continue that conversation on as we leave the office or over the weekend. As you say, we try not to let it dominate things, but there is a continuous kind of narrative or dialogue there that we can react very quickly, and it gives us a huge advantage in that sense. It is stressful because it's difficult to turn off, but that's different from the context of family within the office environment, unless there are other people that live together, or flat share, whatever it may be. But I think so we're not expecting everyone to be the same as us, but there are clearly elements that I think we already do, and we can continue and probably do better with, in terms of without being too obvious, the human relationships between us, those kind of you would expect it in a workplace anyway, but sometimes it can be a little bit more corporate. But just that interpersonal, that very direct and human respect, the way you talk to people, the way you deal with people, the patience you show for people, rather than it being a more kind of more, again, the word corporate, more corporate kind of relationship there. And I think without us being, I guess it's being careful not to be just this kind of organization that people don't take seriously, because it's just some like kind of relaxed, doesn't really matter environment. We are still a commercial organization, but we can blend that relaxed, respectful human engagement with each other to a high performing and rewarding environment. But I think in terms of the values, I think, as I say, respect. Clearly in any environment you would expect respect within that. But I think tolerance, understanding, all of the things that can be strained in a family anyway, but all the things that should be paramount in terms of the love and respect that you have for people around you. And I think if we can continue to embrace that and grow that in the company setting without it going into too relaxed or non-credible, then I think hopefully people would enjoy working in that environment. Because as I say, you can take your pick of places to go and work where you'll be ground into the ground and a corporate life, and hopefully we can provide a more enjoyable. I'm hesitating saying the word relax, because that suggests maybe, as I say, we're not serious in terms of performing, because we are. But I think it's about finding a enjoyable environment for people to find their best way of thriving and performing. And I think if you show them that respect and patience, then people find their best way of getting on with things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think respect, patience, absolutely, and I recognise that in families as well. I think I would add to that the level of trust that comes from relationships in a family where they're sustained anyway, so almost like it can withstand a level of challenge. In terms of the conversations that you have with family members, certainly that you'd have with brothers and siblings, where you can challenge each other and go, no, don't be ridiculous, that's bonkers, like we can do better than that, or we don't need to do that. And standing up to each other and being real and authentic in a way that you can gloss over a little bit if you don't have that closeness of relationship. And it's that authenticity, that being your best self. And I'm sitting here thinking, as I'm saying that, we're not always our best selves in our families, right? So sometimes that goes to the in the wrong direction in terms of overall being overly authentic and overly genuine is maybe not
being too honest. Yeah. Well, I think in a family situation, and I assume our family isn't unique from others, but you spend so much time with each other that you become you sometimes become less tolerant, because you kind of get into bad habits and little niggles and things, and you would expect that hopefully within a work environment that the positives that you pull from that family aspect, it wouldn't go that far, because you still have a level of kind of unfamiliarity, if you like, with other people. So when you meet a stranger, most people anyway are particularly polite. You have a very formal greeting and things, and obviously over time, when you see family members or your kids or whatever, you tend to be a lot more relaxed, and you drop that. So I think there is a balance in terms of the workplace where you develop a level of understanding, respect and trust, as you say, and familiarity, but you still have that kind of patience and understanding that sometimes can drop with people that you have a very close relationship with, which isn't right, but that's just the reality of life. But I think it's the key for me there, if we are breeding and populating that kind of working environment, is getting the right people into the business. And I know that sounds a bit kind of picky, I guess, but if people don't buy into that and they see it very much as a stepping, not even that people have to stay forever, but just see it as a kind of a faceless role, then if they're not on that journey with you, or they're not kind of looking in the same direction, working in the same direction as you are, then it's difficult, because you don't necessarily, it might be difficult to develop that trust, or for that trust to be reciprocated. So to have an environment where, as you say, you kind of, if they make a mistake, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to hold them to account, because we're all working in the same direction. That's where that trust comes from. If people are have a different mindset and on a different journey, then I think it may be difficult for that to be a two-way respect. So I mean, it's the same for anyone, but hiring is so important to get right and get people. And I think it's not even necessarily just about hiring the right people. Clearly it is, but giving them the right kind of understanding of the business, and being clear to them about our values and expectations, and what it means to us to be a family business. You said it yourself at the beginning of this conversation, that in the early days, we were less than vocal about it. We almost hid the fact that we were a married couple running a business, because it was not professional, and how could it be taken seriously? And it took a while. It was before COVID, to be fair. It's not a reaction from that, but we did really embrace it. And we're like, actually, no, this is something to be proud of, and something that we can leverage to create a wonderful working environment. Whereas before, as I say, we were a little bit naive, I guess, maybe to the values of that. And I know we've been on different journeys corporate wise in terms of looking at the culture and the longevity of this business in terms of our planning, etc. So I think a number of things have come into line for us to really embrace that. And hopefully, and I believe they do, but hopefully the people that work with us see that and buy into it. But I think we just need to make sure that, even down to interviewing, just how we communicate, what we say, sets the tone in terms of what people are coming into.
Yeah, it really matters, doesn't it? And how people see us and how we operate and behave as leaders in a business. I notice kind of more now than ever. And it's really interesting, because in my work with other organisations and other leadership groups, it's almost been, frowned on as there's a model around transactional analysis, which is about, not being parental and having adult to adult conversations. And I think that's probably something that's kind of stuck with me, which is why I haven't, really I guess, amplified the familyness of our business and our relationship in this business, because I was almost like that, the fear of becoming the parents and the mum and dad around here. But essentially, there is an element of like just accepting that we do happen to be parents outside of the business, and we are leaders in this organisation, and we are together. But actually, our roles have are incredibly different, and as people, we're incredibly different. So I hope that there's not too much of that there, but that there's trust and longevity there, that it's a sustainable business that is based on family values that matter, like trust and respect. You use the word tolerance as well there, and I was thinking of something similar to that around generosity. Actually, with your family, you have a high level of generosity. I do with my kids. I do with all the extensions of our family. If they ask me for anything, I pretty much try and do it for them in any capacity, whatever it was that they needed. I would try and support and help them. And I think we bring that into the business from the experiences that certainly I look back on or reflect on now. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic too. And in terms of what that then means, in terms of what's the so what of this conversation, really, is like, it's actually got some values that are really quite human and really do put people first. And we're operating in that way because we have done for some time. But how can we actually support organisations to think about that when they are thinking about their people strategies for 2022? What is it about family business or about family and community that is so important that we don't miss? Because I see us doing fantastic programs with organisations, but that shouldn't just sit in work, and I've got some of the best traction at some speaking events and conferences where I've been talking about, even like using our strengths cards to have conversations here in the office. you can use them in the car on the school run in the morning with your kids, and they love it. You know, it's applicable to everyone. So how much can we break down the barriers of like organization and family to bring in and to cross over with our authentic selves into our day-to-day much more, and embrace the familyness of that?
Yeah, I think there are a number of points there. One, the content of what we do. So breaking it down, the content of some of the courses and the programs and the interventions that we actually deliver to clients. So having that content that has that human aspect into it is key. So actually, literally, what we're talking about kind of repeats or replicates what we're talking about here. But the delivery of that as well, by using our facilitators and our internal consultants, having that kind of extension of how we are within the office in terms of how we deal with and how we interact with our clients. It's just having that kind of repeat, or that extension of our mode, and that's across both consulting and our recruitment work, etc. How we work with our clients in a very human way, as I say, as an extension of our internal culture, I think just extends that message, if you like. It's consistency in terms of how we're working, and I think that is for sure. But what you're talking about in terms of actually, because a lot of the interventions we deal with obviously is in a work setting, so people are in work, they're doing a corporate training that they've been asked to do or whatever it may be, but breaking that barriers in terms of how they then take that home. We've talked about it many times in terms of when we look at things from a non-financial perspective. How many lives have we touched? How many people's days have we impacted today, and hopefully in a positive way? But it doesn't stop there. It's like for each person there are maybe just, they may be single, but typically on average there might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in that household. And even if it's just how that person goes home and how they behave for the rest of the day or the week or the month or whatever it may be, but they might actually, and this is based on the content that I talked about before, be able to take things home. And it might be 3 positive things, it may be the cards, it may be whatever it may be, something that they can actually impart to their close ones, their family, their friends, etc. And that circle of influence that we are impacting on can be much bigger. But if the content and the mechanisms we're using are simple and positive in that sense, it becomes something that can kind of filter out into a broader audience. And I do believe the work that we do has that capacity, is that of that mode. So how we do it more, I think there are potentially avenues that we can take a more targeted approach. I mean, obviously, we, from a corporate perspective, we can because we are predominantly corporate focused, we can take a consumer angle, so we could literally sell our wares to that environment. But I think more so it's about kind of ensuring the messaging and people understand that this isn't just about their work, that our work is centered around the human themselves, and work is just one part of that piece. So I think it is a complicated bit. We can just allow it to happen naturally, or we can take a slightly more proactive stance in terms of making sure people are aware that we are focusing on their own personal development, not just making them better at their job.
Absolutely. So it's that whole person. And when you talk about lifelong learning, that's what it really means to me. I mean, looking back in history, people made decisions on which jobs they would take on the basis of essentially how much money it would provide for their family.
Not the case anymore.
It's so much more than that, isn't it? And what we're saying is actually, what does this job, what will this role, what will this opportunity bring to me and my family in terms of so many different aspects, and hopefully positive ones. Exactly that, because essentially most people have genuine positive intent for the people that they love and care about. We are up for time, and it's gone really quickly. I've enjoyed this Friday Live immensely. So a huge thank you. I know it's not your favourite thing to be on camera. And for the record, for what it's worth, I love working with you, Tom. So I really thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. I noticed that we're in separate rooms though at the moment, so we don't work that closely.
Have a great rest of your day.
Great, thank you.
And to everyone who's joined us today, I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will reply to all comments, questions and thoughts. Have a great rest of your day, Friday and weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Take care.